So there was always this kind of herd mentality even then. Like if a place wasn't busy, people would go to the place they thought was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Boston night scene has always been like that. They only go here one night. They only go there the other night. You know, I'm waiting for the day that, you know, they say it's in to come to the club with a turd on your shoulder and see how many people are going to do it.
You're going to do it. Yeah.
You know, that's always been the case. Always. Since Lansdowne Street. I think that's when it started, was Lansdowne Street.
Yeah.
Because John Addison, at the time, he wanted everything every night of the week. And it just became one night of the week after all, because he backstabbed a lot of people in the gay community. And the gay community retaliated by just going there one day a month. I mean, one day a week.
Right.
And apparently that moved on to all the other places to become popular certain places at certain times.
And was that one day a week on Lansdowne Street Sundays?
Sundays.
And that was when?
It used to be Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays, but it was called Les Jardins before Lansdowne Street. But remember, it was Cabaret After Dark before that.
Right.
And when John Addison took it over, I remember they put the wall between Lansdowne Street, Les Jardins, and they built the other side, which was called Axis.
Yeah.
And it was eventually called Axis, but it was the Rainbow Room.
Right, the Rainbow Room.
The Rainbow Room, which I played in the Rainbow Room.
Yeah.
And I have my little logo with a little man playing the saxophone. It looks like an orchestra. Plaque that I used to put in the front so people would know that I was be the one playing.
I think I saw a picture of that somewhere. You posted it somewhere.
Yeah.
So the Rainbow Room, what was that place like then compared to the other places? Was it just another dance bar?
It was just a fabulous sound system with a lot of neon. The mirror balls had 3 rings of neons around them. There were neon arches on next to the stage. It was just a lot of neon. And I have some of that neon.
Yeah, and this was at the height of the disco era. Then we're still talking, right?
Yes.
Late 70s.
Late 70s. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's sort of talk about the drugs a little bit. The drugs were. I was talking to Val on the phone the other day, actually, and Val said that most of the DJs were at least high on something, probably on weed more than anything.
More weed, yeah.
And a lot of them DJ'd when they were on weed. But
weed.
What was the crowd on? And did you notice that? Did it change the music sophistication of people, or did it make a difference what they were taking versus what you played?
I could say weed because I used to smoke a joint an hour when I played.
Yeah.
Then from there, the crowd, they were mostly drinkers.
Yeah.
And cocaine, I don't think was as popular, but it had started already.
Yeah.
And I remember doing my first line of coke. Too long ago.
Yeah.
But it sort of started a new beginning, and then I really didn't like doing it, but I did it because it kept me up and it kept me going.
Right.
But mostly I'd like to smoke pot when you play music.
But now that, to me, pot has a more slowed down mellowing effect in a way, whereas coke is obviously a speedier sort of feeling.
Right.
So is that where the high energy sort of like music sort of took off? Was because of things like coke, do you think? The higher BPMs, things like that?
I don't think so.
No?
During the time that we played music in the early times, we had develop the night.
Yeah.
You start at a slow BPMs, and then you slowly build it up, and then you brought it back down, and you built it up, and you brought it back down. And mainly that reason was for entertainment. It also made people drink more, and you remember the night. And that's how we used to do it. And then by the end of the night, you wanted to slow it down to bring people out and, get them ready to go home. And basically that's it. Or you ended up on a high beat, because when you did that, people will remember you even more, and they would come back.
And everything still had a 2 a.m. closing time then?
2 a.m.
Yeah.
We opened it, when I worked at Lansdowne Street, we were open for the month of February till 4 in the morning. And I remember the hardest thing for me was to rearrange the repertoire of the music so it would keep people there because they were so used to leaving by 2 to keep people there. So you had to change the music to keep them there longer. But even from 2 to 4, there was no alcohol served.
Right. And they're talking about opening the bars again late now, doing something similar, only
Similar to
serving
that.
till about 2:30. And
Right.
So what kind of music were you playing then? Pretty much everything. Were you playing like all the hits and?
Well, the hits. Were what we made them.
Yeah.
Because there was no radio, there was nothing that, it was just stuff that you heard in clubs and what we would hear. I remember we would, on Friday afternoons, Jimmy Stewart used to have a Mercedes-Benz, and it would be Jimmy Stewart, Day and I, myself, sometimes Val, sometimes Tony Porter. We would go to the record companies out in Woburn and demand music. And then from there, we would go to Everett Music and buy records. And here's a picture of me at Everett Music buying records. I don't know if you can see it. And the guy of Everett Music would buy music from Europe, and it was different. And we always tried to find different, upbeat, good sounds. And then we would buy the music, and then each one of us go home our own separate ways to listen to the music and try to put it together, and then we'd come to work and play it that night.
So you'd go to each other's nights and listen to each other play.
Sometimes we did, yes.
When you weren't working the same
When we
night.
weren't working, yeah. But at the time, most of us worked in different clubs.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you couldn't get
So
to
we
hear what
couldn't
each
get
other
to
was
hear
doing.
anything. Yeah.
But certain records would sort of, a consensus would develop around certain records where you'd all
Right.
say, oh, this is great, this is
Right.
good.
Right.
And Europe is interesting to me because I know that when Carol opened her store, it focused on import records.
Yes.
So the influence of European labels was kind of felt fairly early on.
Right, but it wasn't just the labels. It was the influence of the music being from Europe, being different, not from this country.
Right.
And that's what made it glamorous. The record Lady Bump by Penny McLean
Yeah.
was brought to us as a 45 from London.
Yeah.
And the first time that Jimmy put it on the turntable, no one danced to it.
Yeah.
A week later, you just hear the first 3 beats, dun 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 dun, and everyone was on the floor. The idea was to play a song that no one heard before, that we felt was strong enough to make it a hit and become a classic.
Did you get nervous when something cleared the floor, or did you just kind of go, okay, well, they're going to figure this out eventually?
That's the way I felt.
Yeah.
Because if I have a group of people dancing for 15 to 20 minutes, and it clears the floor slightly, that means they're going to go and drink. And that's the whole idea of the nightclub that serves alcohol.
Right.
You play music for people to have a good time, and you take them off the floor, and you bring another group in while those people refresh themselves, drink, and come back.
Yeah.
And that's where I was so successful in my Latin nights.
Yeah. So you mixed genres at first, though. Before you started doing Latin nights, your genres were kind of
Well,
like...
I got fired from the 1270 because I played too much cha-cha music.
Yeah.
And I can't help it if I have rhythm. I come from a country that we have rhythm.
So you gravitated toward more Latin beats anyway.
Oh yeah, because I mean it's in my blood.
Sure.
I mean Cuba has had the most different styles of dances have come out of Cuba than anywhere else, and music too.
So is this where you got the idea of starting to do a Latin night specifically?
No, the Latin night I wanted to start it with Stan Sorrentino. He was the owner of the Back Room in P-Town. And I used to work for them in the 80s also. I used to work in the back room. And Stan Sorrentino's idea was to do it as a fill-in. So he was the owner of Paradise with his sister. And he said, let's do a fill-in Monday night of Latin at Paradise. And we started there. And
Paradise in Cambridge.
Paradise in Cambridge, yeah. And on a Monday night, we would get between 200-300 people
On a Monday.
on a Monday night. in the Paradise before they expanded the basement.
What year was that about, would you say? Early 80s by then?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like early 80s, 82,
Yeah.
83. Because I did Chaps. I worked for Chaps for 6 years. And I stopped in 2000.
What nights did you work at Chaps before?
At Chaps, I was just working Wednesday nights.
It was a Latin night on Wednesday.
Yes. And the reason I stopped working on Monday nights at Paradise was because I had a deal that if we got past a certain amount of people, I would get paid more money.
Yeah.
And I never got the money.
Yeah, they never do that, do they? They
No,
say
they
they're
don't.
going to do that, and they never
No.
do it. Yeah.
I remember playing at the 1270 for $35 a night,
Yeah.
4 hours, and we had to buy our records and fight for them. And then later on, it was $50 a night, and then eventually it was $100 a night. And then because I was doing a specialty night, I would demand a little bit more.
Yeah.
I opened Esme at over here on Boston Street, which later became the Mercury Bar, working for the Lyons Brothers. And I demanded to get paid $200.
Yeah.
And they would say to me, well, if you get paid $200, the other DJs will want to get paid. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm doing a specialty night, and this is what I am. What the other people get paid is none of my business.
Yeah.
So I also set precedent many times for people to get paid more
Right.
money,
Right.
because it was not, an easy job. It was not, we still had to buy our records, and records, our single 12-inch from Europe was $12, $10.
Right.
And that's what you have to do to keep up with the music, at the same time make a living.
So do you think that DJs weren't well respected by owners and things
No.
as far as that, especially when it came to money, right? People always had to struggle to get paid.
Yes, that's the other thing, to struggle to get paid at the end of the night or at the end of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they weren't as well as respected.
Yeah.
And considering that they were the ones that were keeping people there, sending them to the bar when they
Right.
needed to.
And the way it happened with me, I opened many clubs, opened Buddies, opened Esme, I opened the Loft in Worcester. I opened, I can't remember, I've opened many clubs, but all those places I always demanded more pay. And then when it came time to get paid, the extra, because I built the night, and they would say, no, you're out of here.
Yeah.
Then it would be 2 or 3 months that the place would change.
And somebody was always willing to work for cheaper.
There
so
was
they
always someone for cheaper.
who was
Yeah.
willing to do it cheap.
And then what would happen is that the atmosphere would change, because I'm very spontaneous and very, into the music and to satisfy the customer.
Yeah.
That's what gives me the satisfaction
Yeah.
of playing the music.
Yeah.
And it always happened. It's 5 or 6 months down the line, the club was doing great, and then I say, okay, I want my extra $100 for the night, which was not much considering there was 200 or 300 people in the room paying $5, $10 at the door to come in.
And the markup on the drinks was really high.
Exactly. And so they would say, okay, we don't need you anymore. And I didn't have contracts, I didn't have anything, so
Sure.
they would just fire me, and I would just go on to the next job.
Yeah. Now you said when you were at Buddy's, you got fired for throwing one of the owners out of the DJ booth. Were there instances, when you look back on it now, do you feel like there were instances where your temper, where you feel like you had done things differently in terms of like your own sort of like temper or anything like that?
No,
or?
I did things according to the way I felt, and
Yeah.
I always have, and I always will.
Yeah.
To begin with, they didn't give me Lou Feldman.
Yeah.
Second of all, opening night at 8 o'clock, the sound engineer walks in to wire the sound system, and the speakers were not even in phase. I would stand in front of the DJ booth waiting for them, and they literally would take me and say, Conrad, you can't stand there, because I made my presence was so intense.
Intimidating. Yeah.
Intense.
Yeah.
I don't like to sound intimidating, because
Okay.
the last thing I don't want to do is intimidate anybody.
Right. But you had
But
a
I do come
standard
across
that you.
I do come across like that many times.
But you had but it's important. I think it's important to have standards and to try and hold to those standards.
Yes.
But you're always in opposition to club owners and management because they're either trying to do something as cheap as possible, or it's hard for DJs to sort of make people understand why those things are important.
Right. And even the night that they fired me, the day they fired me, because they fired me when I went to get paid, and I remember walking into the office to get paid, and the whole office was just. The table was full of money. Mm-hmm. There was money everywhere. And I went in to get paid, and they told me that wasn't the last night. And they said, you don't even play the music the bartenders want to hear. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but the bartenders do not pay you to have the club.
Right.
I play music for the customers.
Right.
And that's what I did.
Right.
Thank you very much. And I left.
Yeah. Bartenders are interesting to me. We're going to go off on a tangent here for a minute, but this just occurs to me that bartenders are interesting because they can help make or break you as well. Because if they start bad mouthing the DJ, that can become a problem.
Oh, that's true for sure.
Yeah. I've noticed that before. That there are times when I think that I forget that they're another ingredient to the whole success of a night, is whether they support what the DJ's doing or not.
Yes, and I remember when I worked at Chaps doing my Latin nights. I was in with all the bartenders because they knew when the people I was going to take the people off the dance floor for them to work and drink and then go back to the dance floor.
Yeah.
They're very important, yeah. Bartenders they have a lot to say in the club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes for the worse, though.
Yeah, don't get on the bad side of a bartender.
Yeah.